Chapter 8-14. After spending more than a decade as Hyuga Kuroto, many memories of the previous life have become blurred, so Kuroto can't seem to remember whether Otsutsuki Tonari needed to use hand sign printing to enter the Tenseigan chakra mode. If it is necessary to print hand seals, what seals should be used? And what would be the direction of flow of chakra? Because of facing so many doubts and uncertainties, Kuroto now realized the troubles he was going to be facing because of the lack of knowledge he inherited from his ancestors, unlike Otsutsuki Tonari. Furthermore, he has now reminded of the fact that all the individuals who have brought major wind and rain in the ninja world up until now or will do so in the future like Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, Uchiha Obito, Uzumaki Nagato, Uchiha Itachi, Yondim-sama, etc., have more or less received the careful guidance of powerful Kaga level or superior ninjas, and have, therefore, inherited all kinds of knowledge and techniques. And him on the other hand? Nothing. Don't get me wrong. He has in fact learned a vast amount of scientific knowledge under Orochimaru's guidance, but he still doesn't know much knowledge and techniques as a ninja. But Kuroto is not the kind of person who would get depressed over it. If he finds a problem, then he has to find a method to solve it. Speaking of the most valuable inheritance for Kuroto is naturally the inheritance left by Otsutsuki Himura on the moon. There is also the guardian giant Tenseigan formed by the fusion of a large number of Byakugan, but currently, Kuroto doesn't know how to get on the moon, and there is also the existence of Otsutsuki Tonari on the moon, so he can only ignore them for the time being. The Hyuga family may have hidden some secret inheritance, which may be worthy of his attention. Orochimaru's research and development capabilities are among the best in the world, so if he wants to go any further, the connection with Orochimaru cannot be broken. But the way of cooperation, Kuroto felt that it had to be changed. Continuing to be a spy for Orochimaru, being a marionette without any self-consciousness, has no future in his opinion. He must change his identity from a mere subordinate to a collaborator to gain profit from it. This again involves a question of his strength. In the ninja world, the weak are not qualified to talk about cooperation with the strong. After thoroughly readjusting his mentality, Kuroto began to evaluate his current combat capabilities. In terms of chakra, he has undoubtedly surpassed the level of a high-level chunin and almost reached the level of a special jonin, coupled with the unparalleled insight of the Tenseigan, as well as the soft fist and the unpredictable rain will push/pull. If not unexpected, he feels that defeating a Tokubetsu jonin is possible for him, but if facing a real jonin, he will most certainly die. Of course, that is only according to his current strength level. With the enrichment of experience and the further development of the Tenseigan, he believes that it will not take long for his strength to reach the level of a jonin, even surpass the elite jonin. By then, he will be qualified to have a good talk with Orochimaru-sensei. After looking forward to the future, Kuroto brought his thoughts back to the present. He is still in the village's cleansing plan, and his strength is far from the point where he can wrestle with the village. Therefore, how to protect himself without exposing his Tenseigan is his immediate priority. As soon as he returned to the outpost, Mitsui recruited Kuroto and said coldly, "Be prepared, there is a task for you tomorrow." Kuroto's expression shrank. "What mission?" Mitsui said, "I will personally lead the team, and I will talk about the specific task tomorrow on the road." Kuroto wanted to refuse, but after a slight hesitation, he finally nodded. In fact, he also knew that he had already escaped a round of cleansing because of his illness, so now that he has recovered from his illness, he can't afford to rely on it anymore. The next day, the heavily armed Kuroto and Mitsui set off because the Mitarashi Enko's injuries were not healed, so only the two of them participated in this operation. On the way, Mitsui gave a brief explanation of the task. Like the previous missions of Enko and Oda, it is also to respond to the Konoha spy lurking in the sand-hidden village and retrieve the information collected by the spy. After listening to the mission introduction, Kuroto was 100% sure that this mission was a trap to cleanse him. His expression on the outside remained the same, but he thought to himself in his heart, who will be responsible for final execution? Is it the root ninja? Or the Umbu? Or will it be a sand ninja? If it's the root ninja, Kuroto can be sure that 9 out of 10 chances of the person who presided over the purge is Shimura Danzo, and if it was Umbu, then the 8 out of 10 chances for the person responsible is Sandame, but if it was Sand Shinobi, the situation could be complicated. If it's Sand, it would simply mean that the Konoha village and Sand village have reached a consensus. In other words, this is no longer a matter within the village, but a matter involving more than one village. The authorities of both the village behind the scenes are probably responsible not just a certain person, that would eventually mean but the entire Konoha high-level decision-making body. While running through, Kuroto quickly analyzed the situation that he was about to face in his mind. To deal with a chunin promoted during wartime, there is no need to dispatch a jonin. The opponent should be a 4-person team composed of chunin. Because I belong to the Hyuga clan, the other party should not presuppose an ambush, otherwise, it would be exposed in advance. The other party should attack me from all directions after I reach the junction point. Or, pretending to be a junction, take advantage of my precautions, and strike the killing move. So what role does this Mitsui play in all this? Is he just leading me into the ambush, or would he participate in the siege? After awakening, the Tenseigan, Kuroto's mentality is gradually changing. If earlier, all he wanted was to survive, then now he has more desire and ambition in his heart. It is also because of Tenseigan that he is full of confidence, so after getting rid of negative emotions such as fear, confusion, etc., he accurately analyzed the situation that he might face. After a long crossing, Mitsui and Kuroto came to the junction. Here is the gobi covered with rubble. The surrounding area can be described as unobstructed, and it is not a suitable place to make contact. At the far end, stood a lone figure, appeared a little fuzzy in the wind and sand. Kuroto stared at him and immediately found that the opponent's body contained a large volume of chakras that far exceeded the level of a chunin. In addition, Kuroto also found that besides the figure, there seemed to be some corpses of sand shinobi lying stumblingly. This strange scene made Kuroto feel the danger. He immediately stopped and said in a deep voice, "Captain, something seems to be wrong." Mitsui also frowned tightly at this moment. Obviously, the situation before him was a little different from what he had expected. But he didn't have the sharp insight of Kuroto, so he could neither judge the strength of the stranger nor observe the few corpses looming in the sand at the feet of the stranger through the wind and sand. After hesitating for a while, Mitsui ordered, "Go, let's go over." Mitsui was the captain. He gave the order, so Kuroto had no choice but to follow him slowly towards the stranger. After a while, the two came to the stranger. The stranger was wrapped in a gray-brown cloak, and even his face was covered with a cloth cover. Only a pair of bright eyes were exposed, but the pupil in these eyes was extremely murderous, like a beast watching his prey. At this time, Mitsui found a few corpses dressed in sand-hidden costumes lying at the stranger's feet, and his face suddenly became embarrassed. "You, who are you?" The stranger slowly uncovered his hood, pulled off the cloth cover, tilted his head, and said with a joking expression, "Oh, it turns out they are waiting for you here." Sasori of the Red Sand. Title: Sasori of the Red Sand. Sasori of the Red Sand. Looking at the red-haired man in front of him, Mitsui and Kuroto exclaimed in unison. The identity of the other party is no stranger to the two who have just experienced the Third Ninja War. The Sasori of the Red Sand, a genius puppet master, one of the strongest ninjas of Sand Village, who disappeared along with the disappearance of the Sandaime Kazekage, and was finally classified as an S-rank missing nin. He has appeared on the battlefield many times to collect the corpses of ninjas and has several records of killing the elite jonin. His strength is so strong that even ninja villages gave up on chasing him. He is a trouble that the 5 ninja villages are unwilling to put their hand into. Sasori stood akimbo with his hands on his hips and chuckles. "Do you recognize me already?" "Yeah, Konoha ninjas, now that you have had the chance to meet me, please help me try this newly made artwork." As he said so, Sasori took out a scroll with 3 written on it. Bang! After a burst of white smoke, a puppet appeared in front of Mitsui and Kuroto. Looking at the black iron sand floating around the human puppet, Mitsui, who was stunned, said tremblingly, "This is magnetic dun. Sandaime Kazekage." Kuroto was also very surprised, but he was not surprised by Sandaime Kazekage's puppet, but by the fact that he encountered such a strong ninja, like Sasori of the Red Sand at such a remote place. Such terrible luck. It is difficult for Kuroto to judge exactly what strength Sasori currently possesses, but at the very least he should be above the level of an elite jonin. He is an enemy that Kuroto can't deal with anyway at present, so the moment he saw Sasori, he only had one thought left in his mind. And that's how to save his life. The man puppet who manipulated the Sandaime Kazekage slowly floated up, while Sasori smiled and said mischievously, "This is my most satisfying work so far, shinobis of Konoha, enjoy my art." As soon as Sasori's voice fell, the iron sand floating around the Sandaime Kazekage's puppets turned into countless fine needles in the sky and shot like raindrops at Mitsui and Kuroto. Mitsui flung back while holding 3 kunai with detonating charms in each hand and shot it towards the sky. Kuroto, who was slightly behind, hid behind Mitsui and ran backward quickly. Boom, boom, boom. The explosion of the 6 detonating charms caused a burst of smoke on the desert. Seeing that the thrown detonation paper barely blocked the iron needle, Mitsui took a cold glance at Kuroto and then fled towards the outpost without uttering a single word. Even if you don't speak anything, will you even run away alone? That's just fantastic. Obviously, Mitsui has finally showed his true self and no longer concealed his malice towards Kuroto. Naturally, Kuroto no longer cared about anything either and fled in another direction. Watching the two of them flee after putting up just a small resistance, Sasori smiled and jumped to the back of Sandaime Kazekage's puppets, and then Sandaime Kazekage's puppet turned the iron sand into two huge iron sand wings through magnet dun and flew in the direction of Mitsui's escape. Obviously, the leader Nara Mitsui was Sasori's first priority. He can fly. The corner of his eye swept Sasori, flying with the help of the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet, and Kuroto's heart sank. In the ninja world, the ability to fly is a huge advantage. Once you encounter a ninja with the ability to fly on the battlefield, you will often fall into an extremely passive situation. As far as the current situation is concerned, the Kuroto, running on the ground is definitely not as fast as the Sasori flying in the sky. Suppressing the mixed thoughts, Kuroto calmly observed the movements of Sasori, while secretly analyzing his situation. I saw Sandaime Kazekage's puppets, Sasori will definitely not let me go. The fact that the Sandaime Kazekage's corpse was turned into a human puppet by the Sasori should still be a secret, so in order to avoid trouble, Sasori will not let anyone who knows this secret stay alive. In other words, at the moment when Sasori revealed the Sandaime Kazekage's puppets, Mitsui and Kuroto were already on the list of targets to be killed. The nearest post from here is nearly 2.5 hours away, and even if we somehow managed to arrive at the outpost, the station ninjas there cannot resist enemies of Sasori's level. So simply trying to escape is not an option, I have to find a way to repel Sasori. While Kuroto was pondering the countermeasures, he suddenly discovered that Mitsui, who was running as fast as him, suddenly fell to the ground. What's going on? After a little shock, Kuroto immediately reacted, the iron needle just now was poisonous. The explosive tag thrown by Mitsui before did block a large number of iron needles, but 1 or 2 iron needles still passed through the explosion and scratched Mitsui's arm. No matter what happened, neither Mitsui Nakachi nor Kuroto paid much attention to this fact. But now seeing Mitsui suddenly fell, Kuroto immediately reacted, and he was also reminded according to the memory of his previous life, Sasori was indeed a master of poison. Without Mitsui's resistance, continuing to escape will not only waste physical strength but will only add to the embarrassment, so Kuroto decisively stopped. Stepping forward while bringing out a kunai, and killing Mitsui who was poisoned and unable to move, Sasori leisurely came to Kuroto and said with a playful smile, "Why, did you give up on escaping?" Kuroto looked at the Sasori, "I have always been curious, why did you defect? With your strength and status, even if you want to be a Kazekage, it is not impossible, right?" Unexpecting of the calmness shown by Kuroto, Sasori glanced at him once again, and said with a smile, "Don't try to buy time, no one can save you." As Sasori continued to walk forward, Kuroto continued to speak, "That's right, you dare to plot even against the Sandaime Kazekage, known as the strongest Kazekage, how can a mere sand village be in your eyes? Isn't that the case?" Sasori didn't answer but narrowed his eyes slightly, his eyes were still full of playfulness, he was really curious about what Kuroto wanted to do while he was trying to borrow time, although curious Sasori still slowly approached Kuroto. 19 meters. 17 meters, just 2 meters more to go, come on. 14 meters, just a little more. On the surface, Kuroto appeared calm, but in his heart, a group of Kuroto silently calculated the distance between himself and Sasori. Right now, his only chance of winning is to unexpectedly use Rhyme Will push/pull to unexpectedly land a heavy impact on Sasori's body and then use Soft Fist Taijutsu to seal Sasori's acupoints and stop his chakra flow. And the current effective range of Rain Wheel is only about 15 meters, so Kuroto must be as close as possible to Sasori. When Sasori approached a distance of about 11 meters, Kuroto slowly raised his hands. The Sandaime Kazekage's puppet connected by the chakra line shining with light blue light quickly floated, and the iron sands surrounding it also turned into iron spears. Knowing that it was close to the extreme distance, Kuroto no longer hesitated, immediately stretched out his hands, and started Rain Will pull with all his strength. At the moment Kuroto raised his hand, Sasori, who had already had a rich experience for a long time fighting, life, and death battles, raised his mouth, and revealed a mocking smile. Then, while the puppet manipulating the Sandaime Kazekage protected his front, he retreated backward. In the eyes of Sasori, Kuroto's actions were nothing more than activating a one-hit kill type suicide ninjutsu. He had already encountered this situation many times, and there was nothing to care about. Being the maker of the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet, Sasori couldn't be more clearer of its defense capabilities. Even the A-level ninjutsu can hardly break the iron sand defense of magnetic dun, so those ninjas who tried to die with him eventually became part of his collection and nothing more. However, what he was expecting to happen did not happen, but on the other hand, the corner of Sasori's mouth that hadn't fully grinned suddenly froze. Accompanied by a huge howling sound, the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet that stood in front of Sasori was sucked away by a very powerful suction force. This suction force was so strong that it even broke the chakra line connecting his hands and the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet in an instant. And when Kuroto saw that it was not Sasori but the puppet of the Sandaime Kazekage that was pulled by his rain will pull, Kuroto was also left speechless. At this moment, there was only one thought left in Kuroto's mind: it was really over this time. With the experience level of a strong ninja at the level of someone like Sasori, once the unexpected effect is lost, it will be extremely difficult to succeed in a sneak attack the second time. And fighting against Sasori, even if it is only a trivial scratch, Kuroto will lose his fighting ability due to poisoning, and there is no freaking way he wouldn't be getting injured if he fought against Sasori. Therefore, the failure of this sneak attack meant that the victory or defeat has already been decided for Kuroto. In the very instant, the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet was attracted by the rain will pull and was held by Kuroto through the neck with one hand, so it lost the control of the magnetic dun due to being disconnected with the chakra strings. The iron spears in the air collapsed and turned into black iron sand that scattered all over. Looking at the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet held by Kuroto, from a distance, Sasori's face was extremely red from embarrassment. At this moment, he was both surprised and suspicious, and even a little frustrated. Although Kuroto's heart was a little frustrated due to messing up the one opportunity he had of successfully repelling Sasori, but Kuroto still maintained his calm facade on the outside, and the slightest anger was not visible on his face. In this way, for a while, the two people who were both a little cautious of the other side confronted each other silently. This kind of confrontation made Kuroto, who was lacking confidence in his chances of survival, made even more nervous, and at this moment, he was surprised to find that the chakra in his body was constantly rushing to the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet he was holding. The abnormal change protruded. Kuroto still did not dare to show any signs on his face, staring coldly at the opposite Sasori. Feeling the chakra in his body pouring more and more into the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet, Kuroto's courage became more and more empty. He was thinking that he had finally awakened the Tenseigan with such difficulty, and if he lost his life in the first battle his heart can't accept this result. When about 2/3 of the chakra in the body poured into Kazekage's puppet, the puppets held by Kuroto suddenly twitched disorderly. With the twitching of the puppets, the iron sand that had previously been scattered out of control also floated. Sasori was startled when he saw this and shouted, "Damn, you actually know how to use puppetry? Who are you? Why were you here to meet with the assassination team of the Sand Village?" Sand Village's assassination team. Listening to the Sasori's question, Kuroto's heart stunned. The identities of the corpses that fell beside the Sasori before were indeed Sand Village's assassination squad. This undoubtedly means that Sand Village has also participated in Konoha's cleansing operations, and it also means that all the senior leaders of Konoha have acquiesced to this cleaning. But that's not something he can deal with right now. Suppressing the resentment for the decision-making body of Konoha in his heart, Kuroto brought his attention back to the current fight. After the initial ignorance, he now understood why the Kazekage's puppet was suddenly activated by him. According to the vague memory of previous lives, the Tenseigan, like the Rinnegan, has a similar great ability, which is to control puppets. The method for the Rinnegan to control the puppets is using the black stick. Pain's 6 paths are all puppets under the control of Nagato's Rinnegan, while the method of the Tenseigan to control a puppet is to inject the Tenseigan chakra. Once a sufficient amount of the Tenseigan chakra is injected, it can even activate souls within the puppets, allowing them to acquire a certain degree of intelligence and autonomy. In Kuroto's impression, Otsutsuki Tonari relied on this kind of puppet, and the main body did not show up in the ninja world initially, so he easily defeated the Hyuga patriarch, Hiyashi Hyuga, who was close to the Kage level, and sneaked out of the village taking away Hyuga Hanabi. After comprehending this point, Kuroto had a thought. Without the control of the chakra line, under Kuroto thoughts, the puppet of Kazekage slowly floated, posing an attacking posture to the opposite Sasori, as if guarding Kuroto from the front. At this moment, Kuroto said indifferently, "I am not interested in getting rid of Sand's missing meme. We don't need to fight anymore." Sasori's face was now sullen and fuming with rage hearing Kuroto's words. "Taking away my beloved collection, do you think I will let you go?" Even Sasori also faintly felt threatened, in the face of these never-seen-before mysterious methods that Kuroto used to control the Kazekage puppet. At this moment, he had listed Kuroto as a powerful enemy who could threaten his life. Kuroto smiled, this puppet retains most of its combat power. I have to say that you are indeed a genius in making puppets. This smile is not Kuroto's pretentious gesture, but he really felt happy at this moment, because he has Sandame Kazekage's puppet under his control, therefore he has the flying ability in his hands, so it is up to him whether to stay and fight or just run away. And the reason why he didn't leave the battlefield immediately and continue to have a word with Sasori was simply to buy time to think of a method to hide his identity to avoid future trouble from Sasori's pursuit of revenge. After all, Kuroto doesn't want someone like Sasori to be after him all the time. Kuroto knows that if he displayed a little carelessness going against Sasori he will definitely lose his life, so he doesn't want Sasori to be coming after him. You can control the puppet without using the chakra thread, how did you do it? After a pause, Sasori suddenly tilted his head and smiled evilly, forget it, when I catch you, everything will be clear. After that, Sasori took out a red scroll. With Sasori's soft words, the scroll was suddenly thrown, and a group of figures flew out of the scroll, floating around him. These figures are all puppets wearing red cloaks. There are as many as 10 puppets. They have different shapes, some carried knives, some with swords, and some with huge shurikens. Sasori smiled and said, Red secret skill, performance of 10 puppets. Looking at the scene in front of him, Kuroto said secretly, it seems that Sasori at this time has not yet mastered performance of 100 puppets, but even the performance of 10 puppets is not something I can deal with. Wouch, wouch, wouch. Amidst the shaking of the puppets, the 10 red-robed puppets pounced on Kuroto. Kuroto's brow furrowed, and he raised his hand again to make a rain-will push. After losing 2/3 of the chakra, he actually had no combat effectiveness, so he used the rain-will push to bounce off the 10 red-robed puppets that had fallen on him, and immediately jumped on Kazekage's puppet. In an instant, the iron sand in the sky turned into a pair of iron wings, and Kazekage's puppet flew away with Kuroto towards the corpse of Mitsui at the far end. Sasori, who was repelled away with the puppets, secretly cursed, damn it, this is another unknown technique. Sasori feels a headache thinking about the strange and unknown techniques that can be performed at will without the need for the seal, but through this confrontation, he also keenly perceives that the effective range of the strange push and pull technique is only about 15 meters, so he immediately changed the engaging strategy, and a puppet was manipulated to launch a long-range throwing attack on Kuroto. However, Kazekage's puppet, who was under Kuroto's control, hardly needed Kuroto's command to use magnet gun and blocked all the incoming kunai and shuriken attacks. Sasori, who was chasing after Kuroto, saw this, had his face sinking, and he felt as if he was slapped in the face by his masterpiece. Soon, under the control of the Sasori, all the throwing weapons of the 10 red-robed puppets were replaced with 1,000 bones that had been hardened with poison. Since magnetic gun can't control non-metals, so Kazekage puppet changed part of the iron sand into a hemispherical-shaped shield that protected Kuroto from behind. Tink, ding. For some time, the sound of kunai and shuriken hitting the iron sandball wall continued coming as Kuroto was making his escape. Kuroto didn't entangle with Sasori and directly flew over Mitsui's corpse, while also throwing a few kunais wrapped in an explosive tag at his corpse without any hesitation. Boom boom, boom. Boom. With a violent explosion, Mitsui's body suddenly fell apart. The reason why Kuroto destroyed Mitsui's body was to prevent Sasori from finding his identity based on Mitsui's identity. After all, he doesn't know how long he will stay at the border post. If Sasori rings at the door, he won't even have a place to escape. You must know that the village is trying to clean him at this moment. If he abandons the post and escapes, the village would just find a convenient excuse of punishing him for a crime of fleeing, and he will be executed fairly, which is not something he will allow. So, he ruined Mitsui's body, therefore Sasori would not be able to figure out Kuroto's identity that easily. Because no matter how strong Sasori is, eventually, he is only a missing nin at this point in time, and without the support of Sand Village backing him up, he will inevitably lack a source to give him the required intelligence for him to figure out Kuroto's identity. And this time Konoha and Sand Village did secret cooperation. It involves the cleaning of their own people, so there must be very few insiders, and they must be the highest level authorities of both the villages, so whether Sasori wants to get information from Konoha or Sand, it is very difficult for him to find out the specific list of personnel involved under this purging operation. Kuroto thought all these messy thoughts while escaping in the sky, while Sasori chased him on the ground, and the distance between the two sides naturally kept on increasing. Glancing at the furious Sasori that fell far behind him, Kuroto smiled freely. Sasori at the moment hasn't joined Akatsuki. Although he has an impressive record of killing a Kage rank individual, he still belongs to the category of the traditional sand hidden puppet master. He has few methods in his hands, and that is being too dependent on puppets or poisons. Besides, he also lacks the means to deal with all kinds of weird techniques. Therefore, after Kuroto luckily took away Sandaime Kazekage's puppet, Sasori's effective combat power was immediately reduced. This weakening does not only refer to combat effectiveness. More importantly, it is mobility. Without the Kazekage's puppet, Sasori lost the initiative on the battlefield. This is one of the reasons why the Yondaime Hokage-sama can surpass Sannin and other Kage-level ninja at such a young age. Those fighting against Yonadaime-sama can't catch up to him in terms of speed, and those who can't fight him in terms of strength can't escape him. Where? When? And how? All three initiative lies in the hands of Yondaime-sama's hands. This is the biggest helplessness all the enemies of Yondaime-sama must have faced. And as the strength of Yondaime-sama kept increasing day by day, slowly he became almost unbeatable, and finally, the alias Golden Flash became an existence highly feared by the enemies. The current strength of Sasori hasn't reached the peak state. Once he joins the Akatsuki organization, learns about the Rinnegan, and understands the concept of power above Kage level, his strength will be further improved. With this thought in mind, Kuroto gradually got rid of Sasori's chase, broke away from the desert, and went in the direction of the woods at the border of the country of tea. After repeatedly confirming that he wasn't being chased by Sasori any longer, Kuroto deliberately circled around and finally stopped on a big tree miles away from the border outpost. He knows that if he simply went back, he would be the one blamed for the death of Nara Mitsui. However, he can't report his encounter with the Sasori of the Red Sand, because once he does so, then under the vigorous investigation of the village it would get increasingly difficult for him to keep Sandaime Kazekage's puppet in his hands. And once an S-level missing nin is involved in this matter, the village will definitely send elite ninjas for carrying out an investigation, in which case the probability of his Tenseigan being exposed will increase greatly. Therefore he must enact a scene to make Mitsui's death seem reasonable and believable. After thinking about it for a while, Kuroto started taking action. He wrapped Sandaime Kazekage's puppet in a bandage from head to toe, now only his dull eyes were exposed, and finally, he put a gray cloak over. Because the puppet is originally made from a human corpse, so its body shape was almost the same as before, only on the chakra line were there now for controlling it manually. After Kuroto took care of the puppet's disguise, it now looked like a living ninja covering its body all over. After a closed inspection and rechecking to find no flaws, Kuroto handed it few kunai and let it cut him to make the act seem more real. When all this was done, Jiroto rushed towards the direction of the outpost. At the outpost, hearing a sound that was calling for help, Mitarashi Anko, who was recovering from her injuries, was stunned and immediately jumped out of her room and came outside. At the same time, the other two squad leaders in the outpost also jumped out and looked in the direction of Kuroto's call for help with full alert. In a moment, the three shinobis were able to spot Kuroto covered in blood stumbling towards the outpost, and behind him was a strange ninja chasing after Kuroto. The three shinobi didn't hesitate at all and immediately rushed towards the strange ninja with the intent to kill. Even if the Sandaime Kazekage puppet only used taijutsu, it was much better than Anko and the other two Chunin squad leaders, so Kuroto made sure not to overplay so that him being able to escape won't seem suspicious. On the side a short confrontation took place. Anko and the two squad leaders together exchanged some blows with the puppet and after a small stalemate, pretended to attack, dodged a few attacks, and then immediately retreated. The other three were kind of confused why would the enemy choose to retreat when he had the advantage over them in terms of strength, but they still decided not to think too deeply about it and didn't bother to pursue it. Seeing the strange ninja no longer around, they turned towards Kuroto, who was catching his breath and injuries. The most senior of them immediately asked him, "What happened?" Kuroto just shook his head. "I don't know, Captain Mitsui and I were attacked as soon as we sneaked into the lands of Wing Country. In the surprise attack we encountered, Captain Mitsui died on the spot. I was able to somehow escape, but the enemy decided to give chase. I hid on several locations and somehow arrived here." When Anko heard Kuroto's story, her expression was gloomy again. However, the expression of the two squad leaders was of being surprised. After Kuroto came to his room, Anko followed him, and now she was helping him wrap bandages over his wounds, when she said hoarsely, "Every one of them dead." The them here refers to all the shinobi that were part of Orochimaru's subordinates who came with Kuroto and Anko to this border outpost. Today only Kuroto didn't go for a mission. There were two other teams too on special mission, but only two squad leaders returned alive and the subordinates in the team encountered accidental death. Kuroto remained silent as Anko informed him while helping him treat his wounds, and just nodded silently. Only a stupid won't notice if there's no problem if, in such a remote border outpost with 12 shinobi assigned for duty, 8 people died in less than 2 weeks, more so under similar situation, especially during the non-war period. Obviously, this is all being done under the orders of higher authorities. After a while, Kuroto spoke in a light whisper, "Be careful of them, most likely they are root shinobi, don't give them any opportunity." Anko has also noticed that something is definitely wrong with them and nodded. Finally, she asked, "What happened to you today?" Kuroto glanced at worried Anko and replied quietly, "Don't worry too much about me, we really encountered an accident today." After taking care of Kuroto's wounds, Anko returned to her room without saying anything unnecessary as she also understood their current situation. Kuroto was now lying on the bed, thinking carefully about what happened today. Expectingly, today's mission was a trap, and Sand also participated in it. If there was no unexpected presence of the Sasori of the Red Sand, what Kuroto would have faced today is probably Sand Village's assassination team's combined siege. Perhaps, if necessary, Captain Mitsui would have also participated in the siege to eliminate him. As for why Sand Village is getting involved in Konoha's cleaning operation, Kuroto pondered a little over this matter, and after a little brainstorming, he had the most likely answer. Sand Village's Yandame Kazekage has just taken his position because of the disappearance of the Sandame Kazekage. With the Third Shinobi War being over, the Yandame Kazekage needs to weaken the influence of Sandame Kazekage in the Sand Village, so Sand Village actually needs to clean its own people too, and for them, this demand is much stronger than Konoha's. In addition, after the war, Sand signed the alliance treaty with Konoha. This can also explain why Sand Village participated in Konoha's cleaning operation. The highest level of the two sides has obviously reached an agreement to clean up the abandoned children for each other. This not only prevents one's own hands from being contaminated with the blood of his fellow villagers but also provides a possible excuse for them to blame the death on someone. Having figured this out, Kuroto also knew that even if it was Danzo who presided over this purge in the village, the Sandame Hokage-sama, and other high-level officials must have tacitly approved of this or at least were aware of the details. Otherwise, Danzo alone would not be able to bypass the village authorities and negotiate such a major action with Sand Village without consent from others. At the thought of so many people being ruthlessly abandoned by the village, Kuroto was both disappointed and angry. It can be said that 90% of these people are innocent. It was only a small group of them who have actually participated in the human experiments performed by Orochimaru, and most of them have only participated in a peripheral scale, like Kuroto. The real core projects that involve bloody human experiments are almost all done by Orochimaru personally, and there are very few people who are even qualified to about them, much less participate in them in the first place, and even Kuroto is not one of those. This is not Kuroto trying to shirk the responsibility, but except for Orochimaru, there might only be a handful of people who can independently carry out complex human experiments. What is the purpose of the village going so far this time? The more Kuroto thinks about it, the more he feels that something is wrong in this whole fiasco. The village's senior leaders cannot be unaware that this purge will affect many innocent people, but they still did it. There must be something Kuroto didn't know about. Kuroto did more brainstorming thinking about Orochimaru's active defection and the uncharacteristic behavior of Danzo, who has always tried to maintain some level of cooperative relationship with Orochimaru. And suddenly it finally struck him. It must be because of some anger and grievance due to something that Orochimaru must have done, that might have made Danzo go into hysteria and the bastard finally decided to eliminate all the possible subordinates or Orochimaru from the village. It has to be the case. But regardless of whether Kuroto is correct or not, it cannot change the fact that the purge has already begun. So, he has to converge his diverging thoughts and calmly sort out the threat he is facing right now. The threat at hand is undoubtedly the purge issued by the village. Now that the purge has already begun, the village will not let go of him, so even if Kuroto has escaped this time, there will be another waiting for him, and the intensity will exceed as the times increase. In addition, the threat of Sasori cannot be ignored. Sandame Kazekage was once known as the strongest Kazekage, but in the end, he died at Sasori's hands. Just this fact alone proves how dangerous Sasori actually is. Now that Kuroto has offended the other party, he has to be on constant vigilance. Thinking about it, in fact, what is most imminent is the village's reaction to Mitsui's death. Once the village suspects that Kuroto had some hand in it, then there will only be one option available for him and that is to defect. I don't know if I can hide that scene from the village. It was actually a wonderful move on his part to have used Kazekage's puppet enact as a wandering ninja. Because of the third ninja war that finished not long ago, there are a large number of wandering ninjas who defected from many ninja villages, so it's not strange to have encountered one of those during a mission, as currently, the power spear of each village has weakened to some extent, and this is especially the case at the borders. In addition, the two other team leaders who were suspected to be the Roots ninja in the post also saw the puppet posing as a wandering ninja, which made Kuroto's words more convincing. After thinking about it all night, Kuroto recovered the Sandaime Kazekage's puppet that had been hidden near the outpost and sealed it inside a scroll at the first opportunity he got the very next day. Right now, there is serious attrition in the post. Among the remaining 4 ninjas, there are 2 wounded, Enko and Kuroto, so the village will send a support team over at any time, or may already be on the way. And the support squad will inevitably have a scout-type ninja. If he continues to let the puppet wander near the post, it is likely to hit the support squad and be exposed. In the final analysis, the identity of Sandaime Kazekage's puppet is too eye-catching. Not to mention someone like Kuroto who is very cautious by nature, even the bold Sasori dare not use it so easily, and once it is exposed in Kuroto's hands, it is very difficult for him to give any explanation without revealing the secret of the Tenseigan, which is a risk he is unwilling to take. After all, the Sandaime Kazekage was once the kage of a village from the 5 major ninja villages. Even if it is just to maintain their image as a major ninja village, Sand Village wouldn't stop at anything from eliminating the possible suspect of killing their kage and retrieving the dead body of their kage. Kuroto, who has already been listed as a target to be cleansed by Konoha, doesn't have any intentions of offending Sand Village at all. Anyway, at present, there are only 2 people alive who are aware that the Sandaime Kazekage was turned into a human puppet, and they are Kuroto and Sasori. Kuroto has no intention of revealing this information, and as for Sasori, as the culprit who killed Sandaime Kazekage and turned him into a puppet, he would definitely not take the initiative to reveal this information. Furthermore, as far as Sasori's temperament is concerned, it is estimated that at this moment, he is still wandering around the ninja world collecting core for making various puppets while also brainstorming on how to retrieve the Kazekage puppet from Kuroto. He won't be exposing this information at all, as it would also disgrace him for losing such a thing in the first place. While thinking these messy thoughts, Kuroto went back to his room to continue rest for recovering. For the next few days, everything was calm. Taking advantage of the few remaining opportunities, Kuroto continued studying the Tenseigan's ability to control the puppet. After many attempts, he found that the flexibility of the puppet depends entirely on the amount of Tenseigan chakra he poured into the puppet. In short, the higher the volume of chakra, the higher will be the flexibility of the puppet. Kuroto is obviously not a puppet expert. He doesn't know if Kazekage's puppet belonged to a relatively high-end quality or not. In short, simply activating it consumes almost half of his chakra volume. If he wants the puppet to use its high-end ability like magnetic dun, it requires more than 2/3 of his total chakra. So, when the Kazekage's puppet is activated, at most 1/3 of his chakra can be used by Kuroto. Kuroto also tried infusing all his chakra into the puppet to see if this puppet could go further and possess a small amount of self-autonomy. But the result disappointed him. He doesn't know if his total amount of chakras is too small, or for other reasons. Anyway, even if he infused all of his chakras, the puppet did not change any further. However, at this time Kuroto has learned to adjust his mentality, and nothing is compared with the impression of Otsutsuki Tonari, so he did not feel too frustrated, just a little annoyed over his weakness. In the blink of an eye, 3 weeks passed. And he was wrong on the part that the village would be sending a support team due to lack of the number of people at this outpost. Kuroto was quite doubtful as to why the Konoha village did not send any support team during this period, nor was he of Enko sent on any so-called special mission. This is obviously not in line with his expectations, nor in line with common sense. It would be understandable if there was some kind of short delay, but 3 whole weeks? How can that be allowed? It is simply unthinkable to leave the guard post understaffed. This leads to only one possible scenario, at least that's what Kuroto can think of. Could it be that something major happened in the village? Kuroto then searched in his memories to find the clues to figure out if there was some kind of major event that happened at this point in time, but he wasn't getting anywhere as his memories are too vague. But suddenly a picture flashed in his mind, and he was covered in a cold sweat. He now had the answer, and all could do was murmur it silently. 9. Nine-tailed chaos. Although he doesn't remember the exact time of Kyubi rebellion happened, Kuroto does know that it happened on the night of Uzumaki Naruto's birth. Naruto's mother, Uzumaki Kushina, who was the current Kyubi's Jinchuriki, had all the information related to her regarded as highly confidential. And someone with zero political power like Kuroto can't inquire about her status. But this does not affect his speculation, because Hinata is about the same age as Naruto, and he has already received news that the patriarch's wife was pregnant before he left the village. If Naruto is a few months older than Hinata, then Naruto's birth should be around this period. Why did I forget about this? At the bottom of his heart, Kuroto blamed himself. In fact, this is also unavoidable. After all, he has been in the world of the ninjas for more than 10 years, and his memory is a lot vague. In addition, he has always been under the threat of death because of his weak strength. Until recently, he neither had the ability nor any willingness to intervene in various major events, so he didn't care much about them happening in the ninja world if they didn't involve him, and delved all his attention in finding a solid method to improve his strength. Now it's different now. With the Tenseigan awakened, he already has the ability to intervene in many things, so now he must pay attention to every major event in the ninja world like a real reincarnated individual in order to profit from them for his advantage. After making a mental note for himself, Kuroto analyzed the current possible situation in the village. If the Kyuubi rebellion did happen, it means that the power center of the village will change drastically. The Yondaime Hokage-sama, who was in his prime, passed away together with his wife Uzumaki Kushina, who was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, as a result of which Konoha has again lost 2 shinobi with Kage-level combat power. This will lead to an awkward state of the current military power of Konoha. In the previous decade, Konoha has lost so many powerful individuals. Heiei Tsukumo committed suicide, Senju Tsunade left because of experiencing severe mental trauma due to the death of her brother Senju Nawaki and lover Dan Kato, then not long ago Orochimaru defected, following which Jiraiya left the village to pursue Orochimaru's tracks, and now 2 of the most powerful shinobi have again passed away. In current Konoha, if 2 generations involving the young and the middle-aged generation, if we exclude Jiraiya who is not in the village, then there is almost no one left with the combat power of Kage level. Sandaime Hokage-sama and Shimura Danzo are the only 2 people with the highest raw power currently. In addition, at the time of the Kyuubi rebellion, Kyuubi was suspected of being controlled by the Sharingan, leading the top decision-making authorities to suspect the Uchiha clan to be responsible for this. As such, the complete Uchiha clan, an important combat force of the village, was under constant surveillance and completely isolated from the rest of the village under high pressure. All the powerful members of the Uchiha clan were on the watch list. And based on the memories, Kuroto can predict that Uchiha's infighting with the village will be inevitable. After thoroughly analyzing the changes that Konoha will experience in its power center, Kuroto began to analyze the change in his own situation because of Kyuubi rebellion. There is no doubt that the leftover old subordinates of Orochimaru are no longer such a threat to the village when compared to the powerful Uchiha clan, suspected of causing the Kyuubi rebellion. What's more, a large number of ordinary ninjas were killed in the Kyuubi rebellion, therefore the village has lost a lot of manpower. Not only they have to rebuild the destroyed area immediately, but also deploy elite shinobis to monitor the Uchiha clan, even if it is Konoha, strongest of the 5 major villages. I'm afraid that the manpower is still not so much at hand, especially because of the large number of deaths in the Third Ninja War, so it is not unreasonable to ignore the border post for some time. It didn't take long for Kuroto's speculations to be confirmed true. The village sent a message, abandon the outpost, and all the staff was ordered to immediately return to the village. After a simple cleanup, the 4 people at the outpost embarked on the returning journey back to the village. On the way, Kuroto secretly rejoiced, feeling that he was lucky that Sasori did not find him for such a long time. In fact, Kuroto was thinking about this matter. It was actually an accident that resulted in him seizing up Sandaime Kazekage's puppet. Kuroto obviously didn't do it intentionally, and even if he did, he doesn't think he could have achieved it. Kuroto is clear about this, but he doesn't know whether Sasori is clear about this or not. In the eyes of Sasori, Kuroto's rain will pull and the technique of manipulating puppets without the chakra line or need for printing hand signs are really weird, which caused him to misestimate the strength of Kuroto, mistakenly believe that Kuroto's strength is at least the level of an elite jonin. Therefore Sasori might have directly ignored some random border outpost that generally doesn't have any elite jonin personnel as staff for keeping watch unless there is some emergency period, which was obviously not the case at that time. This is because according to common sense, border outposts that are mainly used for early warning will not deploy elite jonin. As a result, the border post where Kuroto was located became a state of black under the lights, but it also became the safest place for him. This is why the Sasori has not been able to find Kuroto up until now. Rushing all the way hurriedly, the 4 finally returned to the village a week later. The village at this time is simply a big construction site. Everywhere busy workers can be seen, various scaffoldings were spread throughout, transport vehicles were continuously coming and going. Anko asked Kuroto with a little confusion while pointing towards the damaged city walls in the distance. What happened in the village? The two suspected root ninjas who were traveling with them seemed to know some news, but looking at the scene in front of them, they still showed surprises in unison. Obviously, the damage to the village far exceeded their previous expectations. Kuroto was also surprised at this moment. Although it has long been known that the Kyubi rebellion brought deep bone marrow damage to Konoha, the dilapidated scene of the village still made it difficult for him to adapt for a while. You must know that even in the 3 shinobi wars that have occurred since Konoha's establishment, and the village never once suffered such severe losses. After arriving at the task center, the 4 of them disbanded after a brief task handover. Kuroto, who was finally freed for the first time in months, is not idle but inquired about the changes in the village. Before long, he collected a lot of information. First of all, the exact time when the Kyubi rebellion occurred was about a month ago. If you count the time, it happened to be within a few days before or after Kuroto encountered Sasori at the border. Secondly, in the turmoil of just one night, the village lost more than 20 elite jonins and hundreds of chunin and genin ninjas. Almost all the ninja families in the village suffered casualties. It is said that the funeral alone lasted for a whole week. In the end, several blocks that had been ravaged by the Kyubi were completely razed to the ground. The casualties of civilians are hard to estimate. Even now, there are still many civilians whose bodies have not been found. After collecting enough information, Kuroto returned home full of thoughts. This guy Obito is no stranger to Kuroto, because, among the classmates of the same period, there were few who can barely be defeated by Kuroto, and Obito was one of them. And now such a person has grown strong enough to fight Yondaime Hokage-sama while controlling Kyubi simultaneously and control the entire ninja world in the palm of his hands as the backstage big boss, and that too with just single Mangekyo Sharingan. To be honest, Kuroto is really upset. This is too frustrating, even if Obito had the Uchiha Madara's inheritance with him or Zetsu helping him out to some extent. However, although Kuroto was upset, and he also knew in his heart that now that Obito had Mangekyo Sharingan and Hashirama's cells implanted in him, he was no longer the tail of Crane, so Obito can't be treated similarly to how he used to be during their Ninja Academy days. At the same time, Kuroto also has an ambition in his heart. Since Obito can stir wind and rain in the entire ninja world with just a single Mangekyo, then why can't he who has finally awakened the Tenseigan get out of merely being an audience and step on the stage and control the ninja world as he wants? Decide the trajectory of the flow of events as per his whims? Or simply change the face of this forsaken world into how he sees it fit to be? When something called ambition burned in his heart, Kuroto's thoughts became more agile. White Fang, the Kaga-level powerhouses of Sannin's generation, either died, left, defected, or escaped. Now there is only Jiraiya left who is not ambitious for taking the position of Hokage. Among the Kaga-level powerhouses of Yondaime Hokage-sama and second-generation Kyubi Jinchuriki's generation, there were only Hokage-sama and Kyubi Jinchuriki themselves with true Kage-level combat power. Others of the same generation like the Hyuga Hayashi, Uchiha Fugaku, and other patriarch, although not bad in terms of strength but still cannot be classified as true Kage level in combat effectiveness. This simply reveals the loss of talent Konoha experienced due to several losses. This is a huge period of crises for the current Konoha, but for Kuroto, it's the golden opportunity of a lifetime. Because for him, the only real competitors are Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, Shisui, Itachi, and other ninjas of the same generation. And out of these both Shisui and Itachi, the two powerful ninjas of the younger generation are of the Uchiha clan. Because of the tension between the Uchiha clan and the village, the stronger their strength, the more cautious village authorities will be against them, so they can be excluded from posing any competition. In the future, this will be my stage. Kuroto is very sure of this in his heart, and this is not only his confidence in himself but also his hope for the future. Kuroto now faces only two problems stopping him from taking the position of Hokage. First is his Tenseigan. Although the Hyuga clansmen generally do not activate Byakaigan when in the village, but if someone happens to activate Byakugan in his presence, then his Tenseigan will be exposed immediately. After all, there is a clear difference between Tenseigan and Byakugan. The second problem is his identity. Kuroto was Orochimaru's old subordinate. Kuroto hasn't come up with any good solution to deal with the first problem, since he can't deactivate Tenseigan, so the best he can do is to temporarily avoid the Hyuga clansmen. As for the second problem, considering the shortage of manpower in the village right now, and now that the attention of the village leaders will be directed towards the Uchiha clan, Kuroto feels that it might not be too difficult for him to solve it as long as he works properly. But then Kuroto's face sank again. The status of a chunin promoted during wartime is too low. Anyone can step on them as long as it is for their convenience. Because of the experience during the past few months, Kuroto was really fed and aggrieved. The helplessness he felt, the resentment and anger for becoming a cleansing target, and the sorrow brought by the helplessness in being unable to do anything made him understand one simple truth. If you don't want to be stepped on, then climb to the highest stair. In Konoha, I need a different status, a status completely different from the mediocre one I had in the past. And when Kuroto thought of a method to improve his status, Kuroto subconsciously thought of Yandame Hokage-sama. Yes, Yandame-sama is the best representative of the story of a mere civilian ninja becoming someone to be highly revered by all the ninjas alive in the current ninja world. If Yandame-sama's characteristics have to be summarized, then Kuroto's mind instantly thinks of the words, powerful, sunny, and high profile. The crueler the war, the more dazzling he appears. In fact, it won't be wrong to say that the Third Shinobi World War was the stage that allowed Namikaze Minato to obtain the position of Konoha's Yandame Hokage, the highest authority of a Konoha, even though he was born as a civilian. Now that the was is over, Kuroto must also develop a higher profile than Yandame Hokage-sama if he wants to gain a huge reputation. He must show up in front of everyone with an incomparable strong posture so that everyone can understand his power, so that when people consider Hokage's successor, he will subconsciously flash in their minds. Of course, the change of personal settings needs to be done step by step and should not be rushed, otherwise, it will inevitably arouse suspicion among the village leaders. After making up his mind, Kuroto no longer delays and immediately moves. In peacetime, the fastest way to show off your talent is through task completion, and a good-looking task resume is also an important basis for promotion. After making up his mind, Kuroto immediately came to the mission center. Compared with usual, today's mission center is slightly deserted. When he came to the counter, Kuroto said to the staff responsible, "I am Chunin Hyuga Kuroto. Could you please show me which B-level tasks can be claimed?" The staff verified Kuroto's identity and handed him a task list. These are all B-level tasks. You'd better pick the first few pages. Those employers are waiting in a hurry. Kuroto also knew that there was a serious shortage of manpower in the village right now, and many tasks were overstocked, so he didn't say much, and immediately checked the task list. The village's classification of tasks is very rigorous. Jonin can accept all tasks including S-level, Chunin can only accept B-level to D-level tasks, and lower-level ninja can only accept C-level to D-level tasks. These tasks are further explained. S-level tasks are generally commissioned by certain forces, mainly assassinating important personnel, stealing confidential information, etc. Most of the A-level missions are also commissioned by certain forces, mainly protecting key personnel and crusade against traitors. B-level to D-level tasks are generally commissioned by individuals, of which B-level and C-level tasks will encounter combat, and D-level tasks will not have combat. Since Kuroto is Chunin, and he has the strength of a Tokubetsu Jonin without using Sandame Kazekage's puppet, so choosing the B-level mission is the most suitable choice. After briefly checking the task list, Kuroto frowned. The tasks on the task list are nothing in terms of difficulty, but most of the tasks have requirements for the number of people. The least demanding of them also requires a team of at least 2 ninjas to receive. At this time, a short figure appeared in front of the working window next to Kuroto. Kuroto glanced at it from the side of the light, and then he was taken aback. This little guy is none other than the genius of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Itachi. Although he was only 6 or 7 years old, Itachi had already shown maturity far beyond his age at this time. The little guy was more mature than many adults from his thought process, and here he was quietly flipping through the task list rigorously. After a while, Itachi handed the task list back to the staff and asked a little childishly, "Excuse me, is there no C-level task that can be claimed by a single person?" The staff at the window of Itachi seems to have been used to dealing with the Uchiha clan. He was not surprised that a 6 or 7-year-old child asked to receive a C-level task alone. He just shook his head normally. "No, you have to think about it. If you receive a C-level mission, you should find a ninja you know to form a team." Hearing this, Itachi was a little distressed, and whispered, "It seems that I can only wait for Shursui to return to the village." Kuroto smiled, "Hey kid, you haven't graduated yet?" Itachi replied politely, "Because of the reconstruction, the school took a 4-month vacation." Kuroto did not expect that the ninja school was also destroyed in the Kyubi rebellion, and said, "Since it's a holiday, stay at home. It's dangerous for you to go on a mission alone." Itachi replied with a serious face, "Now the village is understaffed, and many tasks are backlogged. If no one is doing it for a long time, it will have a great impact on the prestige of the village. Kuroto was startled, not knowing what to say for a while. After taking a look at Kuroto, Itachi asked, "Excuse me, senpai, are you Chunin?" Kuroto nodded. Itachi smiled with joy, "Senpai, are you short of a teammate?" "My name is Uchiha Itachi. Although I haven't graduated yet, I am already a qualified ninja." Kuroto shook his head and said, "I want to take on a B-level mission, you are not suitable." At this moment, the village was suspicious of the Uchiha clan. Kuroto's personal troubles have not been completely eliminated yet, so he didn't want to have anything to do with the Uchiha clan. Itachi said quickly, "I have checked the B-level mission, and there is no mission that a single person can take, so you must also need a member, senpai." Kuroto pondered for a while and felt that in the future it was indispensable to deal with the powerful Uchiha clan, so it was necessary to understand the Uchiha clan's fighting methods in advance. Itachi is one of the most dazzling genii in this generation in Uchiha clansmen, and establishing a personal relationship with him earlier may have some unexpected benefits. After calculating all these thoughts, with a smile, Kuroto, who had an idea, said, "Okay, but everything must be under my instructions, and you can't act without authorization." Itachi hurriedly bowed to Kuroto, "Please rest assured, senpai." If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.